and Regulation A is the small transaction. Okay. So here on the next slide, we have the definition of accredited investors. Okay, we have the original definition up here in the Securities Act of 1933, in Section 2A15. It states, any person who, on the basis of such factors as financial sophistication, net worth, knowledge, and experience in financial matters, or amount of assets under management, qualifies as an accredited investor under the rules and regulation which the Commission shall prescribe. That was in 1933. It wasn't until 1982, 49 years later, the Commission came out with Regulation D and explicitly laid out these 8 tests for an accredited investor. So you all can take a look at these, figure out whether or not you're an accredited investor, but basically what it is doing here is it's creating the safe harbor again, right? This explicitly, it quantifies exactly what an accredited investor is or is not, all right? And by the way, they do not adjust these for inflation. So this is, again, a problem in when you're writing laws and rules. If you don't get flexible enough, you run into, over time, more and more people satisfy this definition, right? Just because the money is worth less and less. So. And then you have other definitions, right? So you have accredited investors. You also have qualified institutional buyers, okay? There are different thresholds here, 10 million, 25 million, $100 million. The reason that I throw this in here on qualified institutional buyers is qualified institutional buyers have an easier way of buying and selling unregistered shares. Okay? So the SEC makes the reasonable assumption that if you just cleared the accredited investor threshold, maybe you don't make a lot of money, but your wife does make more money, and so you have the combined 300,000 exemption. All right, you've got some, you cleared it. You could buy the unregistered shares, but now you want to trade, right? 144 makes it more restrictive. It's harder for you to trade the shares. 144A would be like for Fidelity or Alliance Capital, right? If you're a big institution, you're diversified, your business is buying and selling stocks, you're a qualified institutional buyer, and it's made easier for you to buy and sell these stocks. Just as a sort of a case study, if you read back last couple of months, Goldman Sachs actually just set up a mechanism by which private shares can trade back and forth. There's something called the NASD portal, which just went on the internet. We should also make it easier to buy and sell unregistered shares. So again, you see the market respond. Sarbanes-Oxley makes it harder to be public. No problem. Wall Street just created a way to do it unregistered. All right? And in a way, Wall Street's kind of coming back to its roots. Because before 1933, there was no such thing as public equities, right? And who knows? Maybe if they make Sarbanes-Oxley even more draconian, we'll get rid of public securities altogether. And we have a qualified purchaser as well. So these different terms, and again, you can spend more time on these things if you want, where you find these things on the definition of terms within each act. Okay? So if you go in there, generally the first section of a piece of legislation defines terms. Right? So we had accredited investor described in general terms in the 33 Act, and then explicitly defined in Regulation D. We also had qualified institutional and qualified purchaser. I think qualified purchaser was in the 1940 Act when they were defining what an investment company was. They defined a qualified purchaser. And here is the Rule 144, 144A that we discussed. So that brings us to the end of the first topic, and I will stop here and leave you with a quiz. And one of the things that I tell you about the quizzes is, they're meant to be a couple of things we're trying to accomplish in the quiz. The first thing is, I think any